After 20 years working in the city, I finally bought Peace, a small hand-built cabin by Carter Lake in Colorado. No neighbors in sight, just pines, trout, and a view of the water so clear you could see the clouds reflected in it. But peace, I'd learn, doesn't come without interruption, especially when your land butts up against a neighborhood managed by an HOA. I'd barely unpacked my tools when I met her. Sandy Thompson, mid-50s, expensive sunglasses, vice president of the HOA committee and self-declared protector of property values. She smiled that tight-lipped eye-on-this-look smile and said, "You know this path here. Technically, that's community access to the lake." I checked the deed. She was wrong, but that didn't stop her. Within a week, her white Lexus SUV was parked half on her lawn and half in my gravel driveway. I told her once, twice, then I printed private property signs. She ripped them out. At first I let it go. It was just a car, right? She'd park for an hour, maybe two, said her grandkids liked to get closer to the lake without walking the hill. But then came the day I couldn't back my truck out. Her Lexus blocked the whole lane. I waited 10 minutes, 30 nothing. I walked over, knocked. She answered like I was interrupting a spa day. "Oh, you're that neighbor," she said. "Robe on, coffee in hand. You'll be fine. I'll move it later." I stared at her. "You're parked on my property," she chuckled. "It's just a driveway. Relax." That word just lit a fuse in me. I took photos, videos, even showed her a highlighted copy of my deed. She rolled her eyes. "You don't need to get legal about it." That's when I realized she didn't think rules applied to her. Not mine, not anyone's. She assumed her HOA title made her untouchable. Big mistake. I tried everything civil. Sent a formal letter. Filed a complaint with the HOA. They laughed me off, said, since I wasn't part of their community, it wasn't their problem. She kept parking, even left her back tires in my flower bed. One day, I came home to find her picnic chairs set up on my patio slab, uninvited. Full view of my living room window. Enough was enough. I grabbed my welder gloves from the shed. If she loved my cabin so much, she could have it. Sealed. That night, I waited. Her Lexus pulled up like clockwork. She got out in flip-flops, unlocked my gate, walked right through like she owned the place. By 9 p.m., her cabin lights were off. She was inside. That's when I struck. In total silence, I slipped around to the back door, arc welder in hand, and fused the latch shut. Then I did the same to the front. Tight, clean, no noise, no trace. I left a note on the gate that read, "Private property locked for maintenance. Occupants trespassing." Then I got in my truck and drove out. Not to the sheriff, not to court. I went fishing, 10 days off-grid with a cooler full of bait, no phone, in a mind that hadn't felt so peaceful in years. The lake I stayed at was 2 hours away, up in Powder Canyon. I didn't even tell my neighbors I was leaving. If she screamed, no one would hear it. If she called the cops, she'd have to explain why she was in my home. Besides, it was spring. Weather was perfect. Food was stocked. No real emergency, just sweet, temporary justice. And for 10 days, I cast lines and drank beer and didn't think about HOA nonsense. The world got small again. Just me, the river, and silence. Until I came back, I returned to find scorched tire tracks, bent door handles, and a twisted front frame. The patio door was warped like someone had taken a crowbar to it. And standing on my dock, red-faced arms folded, was Brent, the president. He turned around when he heard my truck crunch the gravel. "We need to talk," he snapped. I didn't reply. Just got out, walked up to him, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Your vice president," I said, "has been parking illegally on my property for 2 months. He tried to talk over me. She was trapped inside." Man, I took out my phone and showed him pictures, timestamps of her Lexus parked in my flower bed, chairs set up on my slab, a copy of the surveyed boundary line. He faltered. She said I cut him off. I don't care what she said. I've got deeds and dates. What have you got? Brent turned redder, but the fire in his voice faded. "Well, legally, maybe you're right, but morally." Morally, I laughed. "You're going to talk morality to the guy whose doors were barged open by your HOA royalty." He didn't answer. I walked past him, checked my cabin. Nothing stolen, just a mess. Her coffee mug on the counter, my towel on the floor, and duct tape her attempt to unseal the frame. Pathetic. I stood quietly for a moment, staring at the empty chair she'd sat in without permission. Then I locked the door behind me and walked back out. Brent was still there. "We could file something," he mumbled. "You welded a woman inside." I smiled and pulled out a second sheet of paper, and she trespassed on camera with witnesses. And here's the kicker. I left her access to a cell signal and food. I didn't harm her. I just paused her entitlement. The next morning, Sandy was gone. Her Lexus hadn't returned. Brent left a voicemail saying the HOA would handle internal discipline, which, in lawyer speak, meant they were burying it quietly, but word had already spread. 2 other neighbors emailed me apologies. One even brought a pie. "We never liked her much," he said sheepishly. "She always acts like she owns the lake." I didn't need apologies, I needed boundaries. So I built new ones, literally. Installed a steel gate at the end of my drive, put up 3 cameras, welded a small sign into the rocks. This land is not HOA property. By week's end, the Lexus was never seen again. Rumor was she was removed from the board. Her house went up for sale shortly after. I didn't gloat, didn't brag. I just sat back on my dock one evening, beer in hand, and watched the sun sink behind the pines. My cabin was mine again. Quiet. Whole people say welding someone inside a building is extreme. Maybe, but so is treating another person's home like a public parking lot. So is ignoring 6 polite warnings. So is dragging your authority onto land you never owned. I never raised my voice. Never threatened. I just made a statement, with steel and silence. And you know what? It worked. Not because it was violent, but because it made them uncomfortable. It made them look at themselves, and maybe that's what they really fear. Not lawsuits, not fences, but reflection. Because sometimes, the mirror we hold up is made of quiet resistance and a welder's torch. 2 weeks passed, and not a trace of Sandy or her white Lexus returned. I didn't ask where she'd gone or how she managed to explain her captivity without confessing to trespassing. The whole town knew what happened. Fishermen on the lake smirked and waved at me with a little more respect now. The local hardware clerk winked when I walked in to restock my welding rods. Even the sheriff's deputy, who patrolled near the county line, stopped by just to say, "Heard someone learn the meaning of private property the hard way." Just laughed. Sometimes steel talks louder than words. It wasn't about being cruel, it was about restoring peace. And I had it. My morning coffee was no longer interrupted by the sight of unwanted SUVs. No more crushed flower beds. Just bird calls, rippling water, and the warmth of a man who stood his ground without ever raising a hand. One morning, I found a sealed envelope taped to my dock gate. No name, just the words "I was wrong," written in shaky cursive. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was from Sandy. I let my pride blind me. It said, "I'm stepping away from the HOA. You won't hear from me again. But I do owe you a thank you for making me stop." I folded the letter and tossed it in the drawer. I wasn't looking for apologies, but at least she finally saw the boundary. That mattered more than any fine or court order. Still, I wasn't naive. Where there's one HOA Karen, there's usually another waiting to bloom, so I kept reinforcing. Upgraded my cameras to live stream to my phone. Welded a backup steel frame behind both doors, just in case. Even built a small trespass box, a metal trap for any future uninvited vehicles. It sounds extreme. Until you've lived beside HOA royalty. Then, a strange thing happened. My solitude became legendary. Hikers started steering clear of my land out of respect. Teenagers no longer cut across the gravel to sneak lake swims. One of the new HOA board members stopped by with homemade cinnamon rolls and said, "You're the guy with the welded cabin story, right?" I nodded. "Good," she said. "We could use more folks like you in the next HOA vote." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. "Me, join your HOA," she grinned. "You'd balance us out." I declined politely. I'd rather stay unaffiliated and undefeated. That was the charm of it. I hadn't just reclaimed a driveway. I'd reclaimed identity. Independence. Where everyone else surrendered peace to politics, I stood still and let the sparks speak. And now, every time I fired up the welder for a new dock rail or mailbox frame, I did it with a calm mind and a steady hand. Summer drifted in like a gentle wave. Families came and went along the lake, but no one crossed the invisible line around my land anymore. And then one evening, something unexpected happened. A young couple stopped at my gate, nervously holding a rolled-up survey map. "Sir," the man said, "we just bought the house next to the old HOA VP, and we want to make sure we don't overstep." I blinked. "You came to ask." They nodded. "We heard the story," the woman said, "but we believe in being good neighbors." I smiled, genuinely warmed. I invited them for iced tea and walked them through the lines of the property. We shook hands, exchanged numbers, and just like that, peace wasn't just mine, it was ours. It reminded me that not everyone's out to take. Some just want to belong. And sometimes, a welded door becomes the story that teaches others how to knock before entering. That night, I sat by the fire pit, alone but not lonely. My German Shepherd, Duke, rested at my feet as the stars blinked awake. I remembered the first week I moved in, how I thought peace was just a location. But peace, I'd learned, is a choice. It's the sum of boundaries, respect, and the courage to defend what you've built. I never wanted to be a legend. I just wanted to drink coffee without someone's Lexus blocking the sunrise. But somewhere in that quiet stand I made, something larger grew. People talk about it like a folktale now. The welder who welded Karen inside. Some laugh, some cheer. But for me, it wasn't revenge. It was revelation. I'd spent years letting others chip away at my time and space. This was the moment I took it back and left the weld marks as proof I existed on my own terms. Fall crept in with a chill. and the lake began to empty out. Vacationers returned to the suburbs. Leaves littered the gravel in brilliant shades of gold and amber. One crisp afternoon, I found a small group of kids walking by with their dad. He nodded toward my dock and said to them, "That's the man who built his cabin with his own hands." One kid asked, "Is that the place where the lady got locked in?" The dad chuckled. "So the legend says." I smiled and waved. I didn't need to confirm it. Let the myth live on. Let it warn the next HOA hero who thought their title meant dominion over others. I didn't hate them. I just didn't need them. I had everything I needed right there. In wood, water, fire, and steel. If they wanted lessons, they could bring pie. If not, they could keep walking. Either way, the gate was still closed. Later that week, I carved a new wooden sign for my fence. It read, "Welcome to the cabin. Of respect, ask first. Always." It wasn't snarky. It wasn't bitter. It was just the truth, the kind that echoes louder than warning signs. I hung it near the path where Sandy used to cut across. A few neighbors walked by and smiled at it. Even one former HOA board member took a photo of it. Maybe it would become a new code to live by, one forged, not by force, but by boundaries upheld with dignity. I didn't weld her in to humiliate her. I welded her in because no one else had told her no in a long time. And when you never hear no, you forget how doors work. She remembered now, and that meant I could finally move forward without looking over my shoulder. It felt like the final weld had cooled. 1 year after the incident, I got a letter in the mail, this time from a local journalist. She wanted to write about the man who silently fought the HOA and won. I declined. Politely, I wasn't. Looking for a headline, I already had my reward. Morning fog rising from the lake. Quiet days where no cars pulled up uninvited. And evenings where I grilled steak without some stranger's folding chair sitting on my patio slab. That was peace. That was power. The kind you don't earn by shouting, you earn by holding your ground and welding your lines into place. The world had gone noisy. But out here, at the edge of Carter Lake, one man had proved that silence, when backed by steel and principle, was more than enough. So now, when people ask if the story's true, I just grin and say, some doors stay closed for a reason. And if they don't get it, well, maybe they're the kind who park where they shouldn't.